Hey everyone. Hope you all having a good Tuesday here at Reinforce. There's obviously a lot of security people in the room, so I'm going to start by asking if any of you relate to the perception that security and compliance is seen as the Department of No, or security and compliance is seen as a tax or a checkbox, something that blocks innovation or slows down innovation. So we're here today to challenge that perception. I'm joined by Jay Oliva, the Senior Director of Cybersecurity at PGA Tour, and we're going to learn about how PGA Tour has turned security and compliance into an innovation accelerator, weaving it into the fabric of the culture, as well as the way that they develop technology from day one. So my name is Bernadine Bro. I'm a go-to-market lead here at AWS. Let's get started. So just to touch on the agenda, we will start with an overview of Jay giving an introduction of himself and the PGA Tour, sharing some of the amazing innovation that they have made on the AWS platform. And then we'll also share some examples of practical steps to execute, steps to enable security and compliance as an accelerator, and then leave with some takeaways for you all. So I'll stop talking. Jay, why don't you introduce yourself and the PGA Tour?
Hi, so I am from the PGA Tour. And most people think about PGA Tour and they think about golf and they think that's all we do. The reality of the situation is that the PGA Tour is actually a technology company and a media company that ends up innovating and doing all sorts of cool things that you would never think of in the technology space. One of the biggest things that we do is we walk out to a tournament out at some random golf course. We roll out 20 to 30 miles of fiber optic cable in multiple loops so that way we can take all of the sensors, the hundreds of cameras, and pull all that data back so that then we can provide it to create a broadcast. There's all sorts of other fun stuff we do, like flying drones with LiDAR cameras to map the courses so that way we actually have the exact geographical layout and all of the topology of the courses so that we can feed that back into various other places. So, this creates this entire ecosphere of data. And in that data, we then take it and we're working to use AI in that to create customized broadcasts and figure out how we can provide our fans with more information about what they're actually interested in. So that way, their favorite golfer, we can highlight that individual and make sure that they get all the details and information they want about him. So there's a whole lot going on the course. And then we also have a broadcast studio where we're doing production work, creating actual content on a regular basis.
Thanks, Jay. That's a lot of innovation that spans a lot of different areas of the business, obviously from in the field to the media and the back end. So share a little bit about your journey and how the PGA Tour has evolved. And some of the challenges that you face from a security and compliance.
Sure. So 20 years ago, everything was done on paper. All the scoring, we would take a piece of paper, somebody would walk around with the golfers, and they would mark out what the scores are, and at the end of the day, they would pull that all back. The process of getting information from the course to the actual scoring and building the broadcast was much more difficult. Now we're taking real-time data and pulling that back so that way we can inform the broadcasters exactly of what's happening. We can also provide that data to our gambling partners so that way they can set odds on certain bets. That allows us to basically provide that data real time within 7 seconds from the moment a ball is stopped to the time that data is then provided to the various people that need to know what that is. And that's on the high end. Typically, we're actually getting that information out within 2 to 3 seconds. So it's a lot of data, and it's not just one golf ball. You've got 18 holes going simultaneously. You've got all of these different pieces of data that are constantly flowing at any given time. To deal with all of that, though, we had to look at what are some of the challenges that we actually face. From a regulatory perspective, we definitely have our contractual agreements with our different partners, but then we also have some other things in our corporate environments that people don't think about we would have. We have a small HIPAA footprint. We have a PCI footprint because of the fact that we have our own clubs. So all of our TPCs, we have to manage those. So how do we deal with that? We have to utilize all the various frameworks that exist so that that way we can provide a safe working environment and make sure that we're maintaining some regulatory compliances. But then on top of that, how do we secure all of our data? That's where we start looking at things like NIST cybersecurity framework, NIST AI, and NIST privacy, because we do have massive privacy requirements because we're an international organization that has all the fun stuff like GDPR, KISA, and all the other fun regulatory requirements. So part of what we needed to do was come in, and over the past 3 years, we've been working on really innovating our GRC platform, figuring out how do we take all these regulations, how do we make sure that we're adhering to them, making sure that all of the lawyers are happy and that we can actually get through and not have to deal with the real headaches that can occur.
Thanks, Jay. And the vision from a security and compliance perspective, what do you personally see as the vision for PGA Tour now and kind of going into the future?
The biggest thing that we're trying to accomplish is building it right from the start. So we're trying to integrate security into every aspect of the organization in every way that we can. This is where a lot of our governance tasks kind of come in, but it's also where we start innovating our CI/CD pipelines so that that way we're doing our validations and our scanning throughout the life cycle, and that includes with how we're trying to figure out how to properly threat model AI models and how we utilize that data in a way that actually makes sense and provides clarity and confidence that what we're providing to our fans is accurate. So that's the other big piece that we're really trying to blend is we're trying to actually build that security culture. We went from being nothing but phishing tests and the regular annual training, which I don't know how many people click to win on that, but I know I do, to actually moving to more of an engaging methodology. We have regular webinars, we have regular engagements with our teams so that way they actually understand what security is and they're able to ask questions. The larger goal though is that it's not just about what they do in the building, but what they do outside of the building. So one of the things that we're really trying to help encourage and we try to offer solutions to is how they secure their daily lives. We offer a password manager that has a family plan so that way they're doing what we tell them to do with using secure passwords. We take that extra time to talk about scams. We bring in people from the FBI to have those conversations with our team members so they understand that the real threat isn't just what you're doing at work, but what's actually out there. And that's one of the guiding principles that we try to have as a security team is to basically take all the things that we deal with and we know from cyber crimes and fraud and all of those fun things and educate our user base so they understand the real threats that are out there, but not in a way that scares them, but in a way that educates them. If they're educated, they know how to deal with what happens and they know who to go to if they need help. And that's really the key. You don't want people to you don't want to sell on fear. You don't want to have to get your organization to come along on the security journey with you because they're afraid. You want them to be educated. You want them to understand the threats and what your teams are doing to mitigate those threats.
Thanks, Jay. And you talked a little bit about the culture and building up the training and enabling people to ask questions in a way that makes sense. So are there any other practical examples or an example of implementation that folks can maybe take home with them today, somewhere where they can get started with regards to building the security and compliance in from the beginning?
I think one of the biggest wins is just starting to engage with your employees across your entire organization in any way you can. Even if it's something as simple as getting some stickers made that you then hand out, so it starts creating that awareness pattern. You need to do things that make people engage with security. You can't just expect them to come to you when there's a problem because they don't know you. They don't understand who you are and what you're trying to achieve for them. So that's part of what you need to do is figure out how to engage with the staff in your organization. Once you've done that, half the battle's already won. Then it's figuring out what curriculum is going to most benefit them and figuring out how you can actually meet them where they are and help them understand what the real threats are. The other thing is to look at your GRC program. How are you automating that? How are you taking your evidence collection and simplifying it so that it's not a massive burden? So you're not sitting there at the end of the year trying to get everything that you need to collect at once. How have you staggered it across the year? How have you built automation into your workflows? Are your CI/CD pipelines publishing things out to where you need them so that you can reference them easily? It's figuring out how you can take automation and AI to plug into your environment and generate all of those artifacts that you need to show auditors and other compliance agencies what you're doing, so that way at the end of the day your life is easier, because that's what I try to shoot for, is get it simple so it's easy.
Thanks, Jay. And you've worked with a lot of the different teams across AWS throughout your journey, in particular those from Global Services. So if anyone is not familiar, these are the teams that provide the people-powered services at AWS, like AWS Professional Services, AWS Security Assurance Services, the support team, and training and certification as well. So how has your collaboration with these teams kind of shaped the way that you've implemented, and what kind of value have you gotten from their involvement?
So one of the struggles we have is that we have a lot of bespoke and customized systems. And when you have that sort of environment, it sometimes makes it very difficult to know, are you doing the right things? Are you following good patterns? So what you have to do is you have to turn to somebody who sees a lot of different patterns. You have to go to someone who has the knowledge base of what you're building on to help you understand where your gaps may exist. And that's one of the main reasons why we've engaged with AWS on regular times to do the professional services. Because they're able to look at the environment and tell you what good looks like across most of their customer base, so that way you can then have a model to try to get to. Where you see your gaps, they can help identify them, and that's been the biggest value that we've found. We may not do everything the same way that another customer does, but we might have some insights on what they're doing that allows us to shape our systems and make changes in our environment so that processes are smoother and we get to a much secure state quicker, as well as produce a better product. Because at the end of the day, our product is what our fans ingest, and it's what they're going to enjoy, so we want it to be the best that's out there.
Thanks, Jay. And what about the security training and certification piece?
So one of the biggest things that we've also done on our teams is we're challenging our team members for continuous education. We send them to conferences, we get them trained up, and one of the most important things that we're doing is we're challenging one of our engineers to get his gold jacket with AWS. We want people on our team fully stacked in the environments that we live in. So all of our vendors, if they have certification training, we push for that. And the reason being is we need to know our own tools, we need to know our own products. So that continuous education is critical, making sure that they have the opportunities to engage in it and learn from it, and even setting aside time in their work week as dedicated time to training is critical. So every week, everyone has at least 2 to 4 hours to just focus on their education requirements for that quarter.
That's awesome, Jay, thank you. And we appreciate the partnership as you design, build, and operate on the cloud. And what can you speak to with regards to some of the business outcomes that you've seen and the impact that you've seen of all of these separate programs on the business side?
So one of the biggest things is by having the secure foundation to build on, and this was even covered in the keynote, by having that secure foundation to build on, you can innovate faster. And so that's going to be critical as we continue to see new technologies emerge, especially as AI has continued to basically speed things back up. So as we figure out how do we utilize AI in our environment, we want to do it safely. We want to make sure that we're not leaking data. We want to make sure we understand what does it mean when we plug this into a data source. What are we getting out of it? How can we make sure that it's correct? So that's where we're really focused in on making the environment secure at the start, so everything else accelerates beyond that. You know, it's one of those things, the faster you iterate, if you have everything tight at the beginning, it becomes much smoother and it becomes faster. It may be slow to start because you had to go through, you've had to do all of your threat mapping, you've had to do all of the base block and tackling things that have to occur, but once you're there, it's faster. And that's the thing that the organizations have to understand. Security is not a bolt-on. If it's bolted on, it's going to break things along the road, so you want to clean that up from the start.
And the compliance automation piece, you spoke a little bit earlier about the documentation and gathering documentation and the amount of time that can take. Does the automation that you've built out into your development workflows for compliance, for instance, help you when it comes time to do things like auditing?
Oh, 100%. But the other thing that you can do with that with building that documentation is you can help reduce the workload on the analysts that are then having to actually figure out what's going on in the environment. And that's what's really key. So many times documentation is left to the side, it's not that important, but we actually have a rule that no user story can be closed out in our environment until the documentation is complete. And the reason for that is because if you don't know what the environment is set up like, you don't know what bad looks like. So an analyst can go and actually see, how is this supposed to be set up? Who are the talkers? Who are the senders? Like, am I supposed to see if I'm seeing bad data or I'm seeing an alert trigger in this environment? That's where the documentation comes into key, but it's also in that compliance journey where you're figuring out, how does this need to look? Am I meeting what we say we're meeting? So now I have something that I can compare it against.
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate you sharing some of those learnings, and hopefully the folks who are listening can take some of those back to their own organizations. So just to summarize then, what would you say your key takeaways are at a high level for the people listening here today?
Educate your people. That's going to be critical no matter what, because as we even move into more of the AI space, your people are responsible for your data. If they're putting the wrong data in AI models, we don't know how that's going to matriculate out. We don't know if that's going to end up being another line for the next major vulnerability. I saw an article somewhere that GitHub was saying that the increase of seeing API credentials in GitHub has increased massively because people are using AI-generated code, and some of these people may not be following best practices for software development and leaving it into their public repos. So there's concerns there. As that becomes more common, as people are vibe coding, you're going to start to see more bad practices because people don't necessarily know the right things to even ask the AI model to generate secure code. So that's education. Teaching people what they need to know when they're even thinking about vibe coding or any other type of AI software development to make sure that what they're getting out is usable and secure. And then also running it through your regular test patterns. And the other big thing is train all your people. Train all of your people.
Sorry. Okay, thank you, Jay. And your story at PGA Tour is just super inspirational, so we appreciate you sharing that and giving your knowledge out to others that are listening. For folks who are listening, if you want to dive in a little deeper to some of the security culture topics that we spoke about today, there is actually a category tag within the sessions for Reinforce. So if you look at your session list, filter for culture of security, there's a bunch of content from level 200 all the way up to expert level that you can dive into. Well, thank you, Jay. Appreciate it.